Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Thursday, Success Thursday, this week with Nilesh Makan. Hi, Nilesh. Welcome back.
Hi, Vasco.
So today's Thursday, we talk about success, but of course, one of the tools we most use to try to reach that successful outcome for our work is the retrospective. So we always ask to start the Thursday episode, what's your favorite retrospective format and why?
For me, my favorite retrospective format is the most simplistic one. It is effectively starting off with the notion that we are all part of a team and we all need to be open and transparent and we need to kind of voice our concerns. So start off with an intent for the retrospective and then focus on the positive aspects. And for me, just putting up a board or either on Miro or physical board with two things, what went well and even better if. What went well really starts focusing on the positive aspects of what went well during the sprint. Let people share and really understand why it's important that went well. The second, even better if, isn't focusing on the negative, I think. And I like that about the simple way of running a retrospective. It's just saying that things that did go well, but if we changed X, Y, and Z, or even just X and Y, right? We don't even have to go to Z because we want to only change two things after each retrospective. Otherwise, it becomes too much of a change per sprint, right? So we just want to change two things. So let's forget about the Z. But if we just focus on X and Y and say, even if we do these two things better, we would be a better team going forward. And for me, that's really what continuous improvement is about. It's changing those small marginal things and understanding from an open perspective that we need to move forward.
I like how you implicitly, throughout the whole description of the format, you focused on better, right? Like start with an intent. Well, the intent is to get better. Like that's first, of course. And then what's not going so well? And then what do we want to do better? And there's this approach called solution coaching or solution focused coaching. And there the idea is to understand that in a complex system, you can't really address root causes because there might be many root causes, right? You know, any event will be caused by multiple things that happened in the past and through time interacted and caused whatever happened. And from that perspective, there's a case to be made that when the case is the most complex, especially in social systems like teams and organizations, it's best to focus on solutions, right? And we were talking about experiments, the idea of experiments on the Monday episode. And I think here it would fit great also the idea that, let's focus on not just better, but what do we want to experiment with? Like what's the thing that we would like to check if it has an impact? So I like that idea. Let's pick the two things we want to change for the better, and perhaps even, especially if they are social improvement aspects like collaboration and communication. Communication is something that comes up a lot in retros, that we focus on, like bringing those experiments, that experimentation mindset. What do you think about that, Nilesh?
Yeah, no, absolutely. When we think about communication, particularly within teams, it is about building that trust, right? It is about getting the most out of people. It is about really understanding and meeting people where they're at, right? Like I think what we often tend to do is not focus where people are at. We focus on this needs to be done and that's it. And when we kind of think about story points as a good example, I love story points because it takes individuals' capabilities at different levels. It's going to take me, say 3 story points to deliver, whereas it may take someone else 8 story points to deliver because they just don't have the competencies yet. And it doesn't put a definitive absolute value on a delivery. And in order to generate that understanding, we need to have those conversations. That's why we kind of look at things like planning poker, which is a conversational tool to understand where people are at. It's not there to say you will do this and you must do this. It's really to kind of have that conversation and that dialogue and understand people from a multitude of different perspectives including a competency perspective.
And we come back to the idea of conversation, right? Which we were talking about yesterday. If you haven't heard the Wednesday episode, do go and check it out.
It's all about the conversation.
It's all about the conversation. All right. So now we turn our attention to success. After all, it is Success Thursday today on the podcast. And we want to hear from you, Nilesh. What's your definition of success for the role of the Scrum Master?
So my definition of success, I think, is team happiness. I think we tend to overlook that, right? And there's really lovely tools that we can use to plot team happiness on a chart, right? How happy were we last week? How happy are we this week? And it's a simple little exercise that you can do with, 3 emojis: happy face, medium face, and sad face, and you get people to dot vote, right? It's a simple concept to understand where people are. And what it's doing is it's taking a very emotional thing and it's putting a metric to it, right? It's saying, from a team dynamic perspective, this is how happy or blasé the team is around a certain issue or a certain delivery. So for me, when we kind of think about this, success is really measured by happiness, and that translates into the productivity of the team, right? So the team must deliver, and happier people tend to deliver more effectively. And it is also around, again, we kind of have to have this notion of constructive conflict. So happiness is not only about just being outwardly happy all the time, right? We have to kind of understand where people are and have those difficult conversations and understand that, when we have constructive conflict, when we understand that conflict is not necessarily a bad thing, but allows us to create something better through the conflict, and having that openness to have those conversations and have the trust amongst the team to have those conversations. The irony is that builds happier teams, right? Even though it's counterintuitive sometimes, conflict doesn't seem to be something that would drive happiness, but having the right conflict and getting people to express their views and thoughts often improves happiness and often then translates into productivity.
And going back to the whole dialogue and conversation bit, conflict is just one aspect and one type of conversation. Of course, conflict can degenerate and become animosity and even inability to collaborate. But as you said, it can also be a way for people to get to that level where they feel they need to express their ideas and their concerns. So definitely, perhaps even a tip for Scrum Masters out there, if that success for us means that the team is able to have conflict and overcome that conflict, right? Not get stuck in it, but rather go through it and come out the other way better.
Yeah, I think there's conflict and then there's constructive conflict, right? And I think the role of a Scrum Master is to steer the conversation to have constructive conflict, to get people to air their views, to make sure that the conflict is being channeled to something better. Because if it's just going to be conflict, then that is destructive. But if it's constructive, then it changes the dynamic of the conflict. And you really get a lot more out when it is constructive conflict. It's like criticism, right? People think criticism is bad, but as soon as you add the word constructive criticism, you're doing something not the intent for your own intent, but for the intent of others. And that becomes very important. And doing it with respect and humility is also important. It's coming at it with a level of love and caring rather than coming at it with a level of malice.
Absolutely, and that's what we do to ourselves in the retro, right? It's we try to create this safe space for constructive self-criticism. That was great. Thank you very much for sharing your perspective on success with us.
Thank you very much, Pascal.
Part of a successful Scrum Master job is to help the product owner. Tomorrow we explore that critical role in Scrum, the product owner role. Tune in to learn about product owner anti-patterns, what you can do to help the product owner, and a real-life example of what a great product owner is and what made it so. Tomorrow on our Friday Product Owner episode. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.